President Biden announced the first 2 Defense Production Act authorizations for baby formula manufacturers, Abott Nutrition and Reckitt, that will give them priority with suppliers in order to increase production. This comes as Americans are spreading the blame on suppliers and the administration for the shortage. According to News Nation polling, nearly 30% of those surveyed blamed supply chain issues, while 20% blamed the federal government and 31% blamed baby formula manufacturers.
When Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about when parents will be able to access the formula, she said this.
Karine, now that the DPA has been invoked and the actions that you listed at the top for baby formula, can you say when parents in the U.S. who are trying to get baby formula will be able to readily, get baby formula?
Look, the president, you've heard us say this. The president understands the struggle of moms and dads and parents and caregivers, and making sure that we get a child has a healthy way of eating, a healthy formula and safe formula is our number one priority, which is why we have been very acutely aware of the process that we've initiated with the flyover and also the DPA. I don't have a timeline for you yet. We want to make sure it goes very quickly because it's so critical, and we know what families are going through. But I don't have an exact timeline.
Oh boy. Okay,
it's clearly all of the above, by the way, in that poll.
Oh, in terms of the blame.
Yeah.
Yeah, in like a contributory negligence standard, I think that's like a pretty fair assessment of where the blame should lie. But look, Karine Jean-Pierre, you can't tweet out, you can't have President Biden tweeting out airplane hangars, military planes full of baby food, like mission accomplished bag, basically flying. You can't have something that triumphant and then not at very least prepare your press secretary to answer the most obvious question of when is the food on the plane in the picture going to get to some parent's cabinet?
That's a great question.
In this inclination toward the I see you, I hear you,
yeah.
I understand what people are going through. It's, in the parlance of our great leader, malarkey. And I think, and thank God, the American people are finally, it seems, over that. They see through that charade. They don't want to hear that anymore. If you don't know the answer, please, just respect us enough to say, it's not clear. There's some other hoops that we have to jump through. I'm heartened by the fact that we at least have the supplies in the country. They're currently at X Air Force Base, and I'll update you with that tomorrow. As Jen Psaki used to say, I'll circle back.
Yeah, she is not showing a natural talent for this kind of thing yet. I guess maybe Jen Psaki wasn't good at the very beginning either, but I think she was. But
maybe. Look, it does also seem like she's not being prepped with the information. I mean, maybe she's got a big binder there that she's just not reading. She doesn't strike me as the kind of person who wouldn't use what's at her disposal. I have been in scenarios as a press secretary where I feel like I have not been sufficiently prepped, and I have taken it upon myself to find answers because I know what kind of questions I'm getting and I don't want to look like a fool. And I think Karine might be in that situation. But even if she's not being prepped, at some point you got to take the bull by the horns because she's the one that's out front being made to look really foolish here. And the obviously more important underlying issue is that parents need to have some settled expectations of when they're going to be able to feed their kids.
Yeah, the administration was just so behind the curve on this, taking so long to acknowledge that it even was a problem, that what was going on, and that they needed to address it. Something needed to be done, that they needed to prioritize this, that this was going to make people livid given everything else going on, and they had no plan. And the whole kind of excuse make, we had to shut it down because there was unsafe formula. Okay, fine, but now if tons of babies can't get food, how does that could be a worse outcome. The long-term policies we need to address. We need to address the ridiculous tariffs on the imports for other baby formulas. Again, we've had guests on this show. We had Peter Pitts from former FDA who said, the European formula, it's not a safety issue. It is the FDA knows that it's safe. It's a labeling issue.
Robby, but the labeling issue is also a safety issue. It's the issue that the idea that parents can't dose properly. And the biggest problem with these things is that people are giving the wrong doses. Right now in the shortage, the biggest threat to kid safety is that parents are trying to dilute the formula to make it last longer, which has these significantly very severe effects.
I mean, the FDA could put on a website and say, this is how you convert
Perhaps.
liters to pounds
And
or whatever.
that's what's happening
or
with these
kilowatts, as I said last week.
Kilowatts. But I mean, this is what's going on, right? Like they've imported this formula from Europe, and they've put English labels on them. That's part of what that project has been.
Wow, that was easy. Guess we could have done that all along then.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the question. I mean, they've known about this, I think, since what, February?
Yeah.
This has been a crisis that we had some longevity on. It's not clear what's going on. Look, you hear all the time. We talked about this in Bernie World all the time. We need when we're talking about a Green New Deal, when we're talking about some of the crises that we're facing, when we're talking about COVID vaccine production and all of this, it's always like we need a World War II ramp up. We need a World War II level.
We need a Marshall Plan. Always a Marshall. Always with the Marshall Plan.
Well, not even that, because that's over there. We need stuff here. We need to be able to figure out how to manufacture things here to meet a crisis. People bringing their aluminum foil in to be converted into bombs. All of these kinds of stories that we heard from World War II, where everybody pitched in, and tuna can companies converted to bomb making factories. All of this kind of stuff. I don't know. Don't quote me on that specific example. But to hear people calling for that, seeing crises that seem to demand that, seeing China being able to throw up a hospital overnight in the middle of COVID, at the beginning of COVID, right? And all these years in, it's beginning to feel like America just doesn't have that capacity. And I want to talk to more people. I want to understand better why there is an inability to respond with any kind of alacrity to real crises that exist in America, even if there are as...
Red tape, government red tape, regulation, OSHA.
Okay.
That's part of the reason.
It might be part of the reason, but I also don't think that the answer to, building a factory or fixing these machines or whatever is allow people's arms to be cut off in the middle of the baby food grinder in order to,
that attitude is why we can't make things here anymore.
No, I think there are certain kinds of red tape and bureaucracies that don't work. I think there's also a lot of corruption. I think there are a lot of private contracts that get handed out to people who are ineffectual, and then a lot of it is that kind of government capture that creates those inefficiencies. It's people who have special relationships with the government who, the government doesn't do anything itself, in part because of conservative policies. There have been cutbacks at all of these organizations, including the FDA, as I talked about in my radar from a couple of weeks ago, that have made it so that they have to outsource every single thing, which means that costs go up because there are all of these middlemen, and also there is that same kind of oversight, control, and accountability that would exist if the government used to have the ability to do things for itself the way it used to do. And it didn't used to hire all of these fancy experts from Ivy League schools that had practitioners from the industries working within government. There were competitive salaries, and people had a lot of incentives to work in FDR's administration. People who actually were farmers worked in the agriculture department, not people who went and got some degree in public policy at Princeton University. And I think that makes a big difference. And continuing to trim down these government programs, which are essential at the end of the day if you don't want to just be eating meat some random guy hacked off the back of a cow and put on your plate, then it might as well be an efficient, well-run agency and not one that's basically run by private industry at the end of the day.
All right, that sounds okay. We don't want the person to lose their arm. We want the government agency to lose its arms.
Okay, no, I want them to have two arms to be able to do what they're actually tasked with doing.
Just two.
Just two, Robby.
However many they have right now. Legislation passed in the House to address the shortage, which includes $28 million in emergency funding to the FDA, may not see the light of day. Republicans in the Senate are reluctant to give more money to the FDA, who some have pointed the finger at over the shortage in the first place.
Meanwhile, House Republicans are seizing the shortage as a way to score political points with voters, with a new ad slamming Democrats over the crisis. Okay, so it implores voters to tell Joe Biden to act now before it's too late. But this is the thing I got to say that conservatives often do. They blame someone for something not happening, and then they offer no solutions at the same time that they are trying to block the solutions that are offered by the Democratic Party. Now, I'm no fan of a lot of what the Democratic Party chooses in terms of its interventions. And I'm open to a critique of whatever their solution is being not right. If you have a specific argument about how this money to the FDA is not going to solve the problem, or the money would be better spent in other contexts, I'm open to hearing it. But look at that ad. That's not what we're hearing. All we get is obstruction and blame, and it's part of this greater culture of victim status that the Conservative Party claims for us, without ever actually taking action and doing something affirmatively, getting something done as so many voters want.
Well, Representative Peter Meijer, who's a Republican from Michigan, he replaced Justin Amash, who was a Libertarian, one of my people. I like Meijer. He tweeted that he voted against the HR 7790, the funding increase for the FDA, because this is what he writes on Twitter. The one-page bill is just a $28 million increase for FDA salaries. That's it. If baby formula shortage was caused by an underfunded FDA, this would help, but it wasn't. The formula shortage was due to bureaucratic dithering at the FDA. And apart from not doing anything to solve the crisis, the bill would reward an agency that is performing its mission poorly. My
understanding is that it was to hire more inspectors. So insofar as that the people who are hired need to get paid, I think it is about a salary increase. But as I talked about on my radar a couple of weeks ago, part of the issue is that the inspectors that were sent to the factory didn't catch the problem for years. And then when the whistleblower finally blew the whistle, they also didn't follow up for months. And I think that is directly correlated to some staffing issues and overwhelm. We see this in a million different kinds of contexts, whether it's public defenders, they get a bad rap, and the public treats them like they're dumb and unable to handle their course load, but it's because they have a caseload that is too big.
We need more police to fix the problem. Baby formula police.
No, I'm saying that the police have not demonstrated an ability to actually do better.
And I don't want to reward them with more funding.
Right, because they have not demonstrated that more funding works. If you showed me that funding the police actually brought down crime and made our community safer, that I wouldn't have some ideological opposition to funding. I don't have those same kind of ideological...
of the police and the baby formula police.
No, what we have seen, the real facts of the matter is that over the last 50 years, the agency has been dramatically defunded already. And now we're dealing with the consequences of that when malfeasance at a factory that has been going on for a long time was not caught by the FDA.
has been defunded?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, we'll look that up.
It was a part of my radar. Look, if you want me to revisit baby formula in another radar specifically about the FDA, or maybe we should get a guest in and talk about the deregulation that has occurred because of conservatives over the course of the past 50 years. This is the playbook. You deregulate an agency, you neuter it, and you neuter its ability to actually do what it used to be able to do, and then you accuse the agency of being ineffective. That's what we've had across the board in so many circumstances, where we don't have the kind of 1940-style agencies that were empowered by people who actually knew what they were doing, who came from the field, and who had the salaries to be able to actually fulfill their purposes. There is a reason why that period of time was so enormously popular, and Americans still look back wistfully to the social programs that persist from that time. Medicare, Medicaid, the Public Works Program, the Tennessee Valley Authority Energy Program in North Carolina, in Tennessee. Like this is what worked. And it has only been through this propaganda effort that has been very effective of deregulating and then pointing the blame at the effects of deregulation that conservatives have convinced so many people that the solution is less government. Even though the real problems that have emerged are from all of these corporate entities.
Just doing a little
like
Googling,
Abott.
and it looks to me like the FDA's budget and staffing numbers have increased dramatically over time.
It's not it's not. It's of course. They're not having the same amount that they earned 70 years ago. It's grown in proportion. But the FDA is largely funded by, and I talked about this again on my radar, it's funded by a percentage of the goods that are sold because of its regulation, right? So if you can't sell lotion or Advil or whatever it is without the FDA making sure that it's safe, then I think that they get something like 10% off of everything that's sold, but 20% of everything that's bought in the entire country. And again, sorry, I haven't looked at these numbers since I did my radar, but I believe it was 20% of everything that you purchase in your household has had FDA oversight, but they only get a very small fraction of all of the profits that are made from their ensuring that the things that you use are actually safe. And there has been a lot of lobbying and agitating for them to not be able to get more that would, in a way that actually fully fund the increasing number of things that they are forced to regulate despite not getting funded in proportion to what they are or what their oversight responsibilities are.
Sounds like another government agency that gets more money and then realizes, well, it wasn't as much as we needed, which is the same situation we find with every other government sector, including the police themselves.
I guess we'll have to do another radar on the subject.
Have to talk about it more. And we'll have more Rising right after this.